You know, man, there are moments in life that just stop you in your tracks. Moments where something so ordinary to one group of people hits you like a wave you never saw coming. I remember this day so vividly, it's burned into my memory. Bernie and I were traveling. We were in this busy city overseas, and people were everywhere. The air had that mix of chaos and calm. You know what I mean? Horns blaring, people talking, life buzzing in every direction. But then suddenly the entire street started to shift. The noise didn't stop, but it changed. It became something else. I saw people laying out small mats, men in suits, workers covered in dust, old guys with soft faces, young dudes with energy in their eyes, and then man, they all lined up shoulder to shoulder like they were part of one heartbeat. No one said go. No one shouted instructions, but somehow everyone just knew exactly what to do. Bernie looked at me like, what's going on? And I didn't even know what to say. I'd seen videos of Muslims praying before I'd read about it. But seeing it happen right there, right in front of me, was completely different. It wasn't a performance. It wasn't a show. It was real, alive, raw devotion. It's like the world stopped spinning for a minute. You could feel this invisible energy settle over the street. The calls from the mosques echoed through the air, that deep melodic sound that hits you somewhere between your chest and your soul, and every single person turned toward one direction, bowed, stood, moved in sync. Man, I'm telling you, I've seen crowds at concerts move together. I've seen fighters in a gym move with rhythm. But this was different. It was unity with purpose. Bernie whispered something about discipline, and I just nodded because it was more than discipline. It was like watching surrender, not weakness, but a kind of strength that comes from letting go. It's hard to explain unless you've been there, unless you felt that silence, that stillness in the middle of a noisy world. The way they all dropped into prostration together, it was powerful. And I just stood there thinking, man, we spend so much of our lives running, chasing something, trying to fill that empty space inside with stuff, money, fame, attention. But these people, they found it right there on the ground. And for a second, I thought maybe that's what we're all missing. Maybe it's not about doing more or being more. Maybe it's about being still, knowing who you are, knowing what you're bowing to. When the prayer ended, everyone stood up, rolled up their mats, smiled, went back to work like it was the most natural thing in the world. And Bernie, man, he just shook his head in disbelief. They all just did that together, he said. And I laughed, but it wasn't funny. It was like we'd just seen a piece of truth that the world hides from you because it's too simple, too pure to sell. And after we walked away from that street, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Man, it just kept replaying in my head like a scene that refuses to fade. You know how sometimes you witness something that rewires the way you see the world? That's what this was. I started asking myself, what makes that level of unity possible? What makes a person stop in the middle of their day, drop everything, face one direction, and surrender with that kind of focus? I kept telling Bernie it wasn't just religion, it was rhythm, it was order in a world of noise. He said it reminded him of the marches he'd seen when people were fighting for justice. But this felt different. It wasn't a protest, it was peace. There was no anger, no demand, no ego, just presence. I remember standing by a coffee shop later, still hearing that faint echo of the call to prayer drifting through the air, and I realized I was jealous in the strangest way. Not jealous of faith itself, but jealous of that certainty, that connection. Because in the West, man, we've built this world where everything is about the self-image, self-worth, self-improvement. But what if the real evolution of the human spirit isn't about the self at all? What if it's about dissolving it? Those people on that street didn't care who was watching, didn't care if they looked cool. They just cared about aligning themselves with something bigger than their own noise. That blew me away. I started reading about what that act actually means, the way the prayer positions mirror humility, gratitude, unity, how every movement has meaning. And the more I learned, the more it made sense why it looked so peaceful. They weren't escaping reality. They were grounding themselves in it. Think about that, man. 5 times a day, they take a break from everything, from work, from scrolling, from chasing, to reconnect with purpose. Meanwhile, most of us can't even take 5 minutes away from our phones without feeling like the world's ending. Bernie and I talked about it on the ride back, and he said something that stuck with me. Maybe freedom isn't doing whatever you want. Maybe freedom is knowing exactly what you're supposed to do. And I just sat there staring out the window, watching the city roll by, thinking about that line. Because those men praying, they looked free. Free from comparison, free from distraction. They weren't trapped in some rat race. They were living with clarity. And I think that's what moved me so much. The modern world sells chaos, man. It sells us noise, endless stimulation, this idea that happiness is somewhere out there if you just buy one more thing or achieve one more goal. But watching that prayer, it felt like happiness was right there, already inside, unlocked by discipline and faith. I told Bernie that maybe the reason people misunderstand Islam is because they only see it through headlines. They never see the heart of it, the part that's about peace and surrender and community. He nodded, and for once he didn't have a political take. He just looked thoughtful, quiet, almost humbled. And honestly, so was I. It's rare for me to be quiet. But that experience kind of stripped the words away for a while. I kept imagining what it must feel like to live every day with that kind of structure, that balance between action and stillness. It made me question how often we stop and reflect, how often we just breathe. Because life's moving so fast, man, and moments like that, they remind you that stillness is sacred. And as days went by, I noticed that the experience didn't leave me. It followed me into conversations, into quiet moments, even into the gym when I was lifting and my mind would drift back to that street. That sound, that sight of people moving together like waves on the same tide. And it made me realize how disconnected we've become from one another. We talk about community all the time, but most of the time our community lives inside screens, not in the real world. Those men and women I saw praying weren't connected by Wi-Fi. They were connected by intention, by rhythm, by something ancient that doesn't need translation. It hit me that maybe modern culture has confused connection with contact. We touch everyone but truly connect with no one. That prayer showed me what real connection looks like, because even though I didn't understand the words they were reciting, I understood the energy, the humility, the surrender. It was universal. It made me start reflecting on the way we approach success. We measure it by how much control we can gain over the world, while faith, at least the kind I witnessed, is about letting go of control. That's such a paradox, man. We chase certainty through control, but they find certainty through surrender. And it works. You could see it in their calm faces afterward, like they had emptied out the noise and were ready to start again fresh. I remember talking to some locals later who told me that prayer keeps their day balanced, that it brings order to chaos. And I thought, isn't that what we all want? To find order in the mess of our lives, to find peace even when the world's spinning too fast. I started thinking about how meditation became popular in the West, and we borrowed that idea from Eastern traditions because we knew something was missing. But what I saw wasn't just meditation. It was meditation with direction, purpose, and community. It was like the next level of mindfulness, and it made me wonder if the reason we feel lost is because we've been searching for meaning in isolation, while meaning might only truly exist when you're part of something bigger than yourself. I kept replaying Bernie's words, maybe freedom is knowing exactly what you're supposed to do, and the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. The people who look the most disciplined sometimes turn out to be the most at peace. We think discipline is restriction, but maybe discipline is liberation because it frees you from chaos. That's a hard concept for us to digest, especially in a culture where individuality is everything. But maybe the beauty of individuality only shines when it's balanced by belonging. Watching that prayer taught me that belonging isn't losing yourself. It's about aligning yourself. It's about being a single note in a melody that only makes sense when everyone's playing their part. That realization shook something loose inside me, man, like a truth I didn't know I was missing. I started paying more attention to small things after that, how people greet each other, how they eat, how they pause before they speak, and I began to see intention everywhere. It made me slow down, and slowing down, I realized, is terrifying because it forces you to face yourself. But maybe that's the whole point. Those few minutes of prayer, that silence in motion, is really a mirror. It shows you who you are without all the noise. And that, to me, is the kind of power the modern world doesn't understand. It's not loud, it's not flashy, but it's unshakable. It's a kind of power that builds character quietly, one bow at a time, one breath at a time, 5 times a day. And that rhythm, man, that's what makes it so powerful. Because at the end of the day, we're all looking for the same thing. Moments that stop us in our tracks, moments that remind us we're part of something bigger. And that busy street with horns blaring and people praying shoulder to shoulder gave me exactly that. A wave I never saw coming that changed the way I see the world forever.